أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ. So these are the ones they are the ones that follow the guidance from their Lord. They're on the guidance that God gave them. Here he translates, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Here he translates, they're the happy ones, which obviously if you're successful, you're happy. In his larger commentary, his larger interpretation, which is this, unfortunately this is no longer available, but it is available on Kindle. But inshallah, try to get that out again. In here he calls them the successful ones. So this was later. He did this several years after this. He did this after the Gulf War. He was very troubled by what had happened and how Muslims were being demonized. So he wanted to do the essential Quran to just show people basically Jawahir al-Quran, what Imam al-Ghazali identified as the essential meanings of this book, which is why it's called the Essential Quran. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتُهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. As for the ungrateful who refuse, it is the same to them, whether you warn them or not. They do not believe. So, kafir is a really difficult word in Arabic. Even theologically, it's a problematic term. Kafara means to cover over. In fact, arguably cover, which has the same sounds in it, might have it might just be one of those coincidences of language, but who knows? I actually have a book that attempts to prove that all language goes back to Arabic. A lot of it's stretching, but believe it or not, in 1828, Mr. Webster, Noah Webster, who wrote the first American dictionary, and Noah Webster was a very pious man. He actually has a really brilliant little book called Advice for the Young, which is all how to stay on the path. But anyway, Noah Webster felt America needed to have its own English and not be tied to the old country. He had that real American kind of independence, right? We're not English. We have our own way of speaking our language. So he created this dictionary, but what he wanted to prove in that dictionary, believe it or not, was that all of English went back to Hebrew as the source language of the world. What he found, though, was there were more cognates in Arabic than in Hebrew. So he ended up putting a whole bunch he knew Arabic from, he studied Hebrew and Arabic, I think at Harvard. But anyway, so if you look at you can get a facsimile of his 1828 edition, and he's got all these Arabic words in there, which is like he says cave is kaf, cave, kaf, and then ard is earth, ard, earth, and then cover, kafar. So he's got all these baboos, baby. He goes on and on. It's very interesting. But what is fascinating is, where did they get lithographic typesetting in 1828 in the United States in Arabic? That's what really surprised me. Like, where did they get the lithograph to do that? Amazing. So kufar, what's important to know, it means ingratitude. Like the Prophet ﷺ said that women in particular had to be very careful of what he called kufran al-ishra, to be ungrateful for the companionship of their husbands, because husbands can be very difficult and can have, they can get grumpy, they can do all these things, but they're important, right? They're taking care of you, they're hopefully paying all the bills and things like that. So the Prophet ﷺ said, it was important not to fall into a kind of ingratitude, and vice versa. The man, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, once a man came knocking on his door to complain about his wife. This was Medina was a small city. And so he went to come, and then he heard there was a fight inside the house, and his wife was kind of saying things to Omar. He thought, oh my God, if that's Omar's wife, what am I complaining about? So he's going to leave. Omar opened the door, said, where are you going? And he said, no, I made a mistake. He said, no, you came for a reason. What did you come for? And then he explained to him, and he said, Omar laughed and said, my wife takes care of me. She does all these things, take care of the children. I should be patient if she gets upset. So it goes both ways. So that's kufran. It's an ingratitude. And then kafir is also somebody who knows the truth and rejects it. I mean, that's really the essential aspect. So the truth has become clear and they reject it. That's real kufr. And that's why وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. We're going to get to that. Don't put idols beside God knowingly. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. It's a jumla haliyah. So in other words, you know what you're doing. Don't do that wittingly. Don't do it knowingly. So kufr, Allah always spoke before the hujjah was on the Arabs. He spoke, Ya ayyuhan nas. So all the Meccan, even though they were not Muslims, he's calling them nas. He doesn't call them kuffar. He calls them nas because they're being invited to the calling. Once the hujjah was established, once they saw the miracles of the Prophet, once the Quran, they understood the Quran, which was their language, and they knew they couldn't imitate it, then they had no excuse. So to apply that to the rest of humanity, most of the people that you see are nas. And in fact, one wonders, should we really assume people are Muslim before we assume they're not Muslim? Why would you make the assumption that people... I mean, I was sitting with, and Nazim Bakhsh was with me from Canada. We were sitting with John Taylor Gatto. And I looked at John Taylor Gatto and I said, you know, John, because he was a wonderful human being that really loved people and loved education and did amazing things in education. Unprecedented Teacher of the Year out of 54,000 teachers in New York 4 times. Like nobody else had ever done, even it twice. So I said to John, you know, John, you're a Muslim. And he looked down for about 30 seconds, and then he raised his head and he said, I accept that. Now, according to Abu Hanifa, that makes him a Muslim. In fact, according to Abu Hanifa, anybody that calls the Prophet, prophet. So if somebody calls the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad, the Prophet, that must mean that they think he's a prophet. So, I mean, obviously you can get into details and push people. That's fine if you want to do that. But having a good opinion just generally is a good thing to do. But there are kuffar. I mean, there are kuffar, and there are evil people in the world, and we shouldn't be Pollyannish about that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after that, you know, He says, it's the same to them, whether you warn them or don't warn them. Well, we know, if you think about, they could have said that about Abu Sufyan, because Abu Sufyan fought the Prophet. Look at how many years he fought the Prophet. So people could have just written him off and said, oh, it's so